I never understood why Elliott didn't become very, very successful right away. I thought he was good as soon as I saw him. This guy's really good. He's a good writer. He's got very good words.
Great looking guy, looked like a rock star, had beautiful blonde hair, the great face, was a real dandy. He dressed spectacularly.
Elliott was a very poetic guy, could write metaphorically, and in a way, he was more akin to like a Bob Dylan.
I don't think he's ever written a bad song. I've never come across an Elliott Murphy song that I thought didn't work. And he's made a lot of music, and a lot of, modern music that, to my mind, is as good as his earliest stuff and as good as his best music. He's still at his best. Elliott went overseas and made a life for himself, an entire life for himself that he couldn't find in the United States. He's made a career as a musician. That's very hard to do, and it's a great success.
But Elliott was what we call a career artist, and had integrity, was able to survive when a lot of other people just left the business altogether.
He's a wonderful guy, He's got so much soul and spirit and never gives up, and I just have tremendous admiration for him. I admire him greatly.
Hi, I'm Denny Somach, and welcome to the Classic Rock Archive. Just come in and take a seat. Join us for our conversation with Elliott Murphy. He's a singer, songwriter, author, poet, and actor. And right now, he has so many great things going on. Elliott Murphy is experiencing his second act, and you are about to become part of it.
Let's start off by congratulating you on your induction into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.
Where's the trophy?
The trophy is actually right
First
here.
time, I feel like...
And it's heavy.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's very heavy.
So what did that mean to you? I mean, we'll get into a little of your history, but that must have been a great evening.
It was, and it was a big surprise because, I've been living in France for nearly 30 years.
Right.
2 years ago, I had a film made about me called The Second Act of Elliott Murphy.
Yes.
And that was shown at the Stony Brook Film Festival in Long Island, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And about 6 months later, I started hearing whisperings and rumors that I was going to be inducted into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, and it was just a great night.
And who inducted you?
The great Billy Joel, of course, the Long Island legend.
Who you know from your Long Island days, right?
I do.
You opened a lot of shows for him.
A lot of shows from him, a lot of shows in Philadelphia.
And if I'm not mistaken, just the other night, he's doing this residency at Madison Square Garden,
Yeah.
and lo and behold, you come up and do Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side. How did that come about?
It was Billy Joel. I've kept in contact with both Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen, and these guys, they are just so generous, and they have such big hearts. And Billy said, hey, why don't you also come up on stage and sing something? And we're trying to figure out what to sing.
Right.
And since it was the Long Island experience, we thought, why not a Lou Reed song? Because he's from Long Island as well.
Right.
So we did Walk on the Wild Side.
And what did that feel like? Sold out garden?
It felt good. It felt very good. His band is just, they're just so tight. And we ran through it one time, and the teleprompter with the words, that always helps after a certain age.
Right.
But it was just monumental, and especially the line where it says New York City is the place where they say, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. The audience, 20,000 people just went nuts.
So let me just preface by saying I actually interviewed you when Aqua Show came out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're, as you said, from Long Island. And for those that don't know, this has been quite a few years now, Aqua Show was a show that your father had, right? In Flushing?
Right.
Could you give me the Wikipedia version?
The original Aqua Show, my father was a poor kid from Brooklyn. Actually, his father was an immigrant, Irish immigrant, who was a blacksmith. And my father wanted to get into show business, and he somehow started to do this show on the site of the 1939 World's Fair. They still had this huge theater and a huge Olympic-sized swimming pool, and he came up with this concept of the Aqua Show. So it was a huge pool with like monkeys dancing on logs and kind of Esther Williams, kind of, those ballet swimmers, some incredible music. There was Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington played there. comedians, and I was exposed to all of that, growing up in the 50s. It was something. I learned a big lesson there from my father, which is, luck plays a big part in show business, because no matter how good the show was, if it rained, nobody came. So I named my first album really in homage to him.
Now, I know this happened to you, and it's so unbelievable, especially to people who have bands. You literally took your demo tape and walked in off the street to Polydor Records.
Mm-hmm.
Run through that, will you?
It was an impossible story that could never happen today. It was, pre-security. It was pre-lawsuits about copyright infringement, So we were basically, when I came back from Europe, I'd been playing on the streets over there for a year, and me and my brother Matthew just started knocking on doors on Broadway. And Polydor was kind of the new kid on the block, they had it was a big company in Europe, but new in America. We just knocked on the door and walked in. The receptionist said, what do you want? And we said, we'd like someone to listen to our demo tape. And she said, when? And my brother had the balls to say, now. And she called up A&R, and someone came out, a wonderful woman named Shelley Snow, and she listened to it. And she said, okay, I like it. Can you come back with your band like in 2 days? And we'll do an audition. And we did, in front of Peter Siegel, who was the head of A&R. And Peter really went for it. Peter Siegel came from that 1960s folk scene in Greenwich Village. He was a member of a band called the Even Dozen Jug Band with John Sebastian, Loving Spoonful, William O'Dar, Steve Katz, who ended up producing my third album. And Peter really liked it and said, get a lawyer, and I had a deal.
Couldn't happen today, you're absolutely
Could
right.
not happen today.
Now, if I remember, because I remember I was a disc jockey in Philly, and we played your first album. The big song was "Last of the Rock Stars," correct?
Yeah.
So you still do that today, I'm assuming, correct?
Well, I do.
On
And
your show?
Olivier Duron, my French guitarist.
Right.
We did that at the Long Island Music Hall of Fame together.
Okay, so
Done that nearly every show, I think. in my life.
okay, and "How's the Family?" I think was the other song
Yeah.
that got a lot of airplay. Looking back on those two songs, because you got such critical acclaim, and we're going to talk about, you said you're in your second life now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just look back a little bit on that first album and your experiences when that album came out and you were getting airplay and you were starting to, you were getting acclaim and you were hailed as the next Dylan and all that stuff. Do you think that hurt you in any way?
I'll tell you, it was...
Because your story is so unique
It is.
in what happened to you.
It was almost too much too soon in that, as I said, I'd been playing on the streets in Europe, put this band together with my brother, and within a few months we had a record deal. And boom, that Rolling Stone review came out that reviewed my first album and Bruce's second album, almost together, called The Best Dylan Since 1968. The problem for me was to get that kind of accolades on your first album, and then they're comparing Aqua Show to Blonde on Blonde, which was Bob Dylan's, fifth or sixth album.
Right.
Where do I go from there? That was really the problem, Where do I go from there? So I kind of, my next album I decided I wanted to leave the suburban angst behind me, go for kind of a bigger canvas. But, I must say, and I've said this many times, being called the new Bob Dylan, I don't think it's a curse. I think it's a guarantee of lifetime employment, because every new Bob Dylan I know is still out there working.
Right.
Myself, Bruce, Loudon Wainwright, John Prine. I mean, we're all still, hitting the boards. So maybe it's not such a bad thing.
So there's a documentary that you have out also called Second Act. Tell me, why do you think this is your second act? What made you decide to do that now?
Well, the title of that documentary, The Second Act of Elliott Murphy, came from a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, who said there are no second acts in American lives. And I guess the premise being that I really had to move to Europe to get a second act, because by the end of the 70s and through the 80s, things were pretty tough for me with my career over here. The music scene changed. 77 was this was a very difficult year. Elvis died, disco began, and punk began, and singer-songwriters, if you hadn't made it already, it was kind of a dirty word. So I played my first show in Paris in 1979, and by 1989 my career was really focused in Europe, and I finally made the move.
Right. And what made you decide that Paris was the place as opposed to Belgium or the Netherlands? Or?
Well, there is a tradition of a lot of American musicians, jazz musicians, and of course authors and painters and all kinds of artists who find a home in Paris. And the French are very welcoming to other culture and other arts. And that was, I love the city. I mean, it's just a beautiful city. And then I met my wife, Françoise, who was French. And that kind of sealed the deal.
So, for those, as you mentioned, you moved to France and you play a lot of shows there. Do you come back here once a year, once every other year? Because I know you do these gigs in the Northeast where you have a little bit of a following. Mm-hmm. How often do you do that?
We come back almost once a year, it seems.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, and we went to the West Coast a couple of times too. My son Gaspar was born in France. He went to college in America at Purchase, which is part of the State University in New York. So when he was in school, I would come even more often to see him. But I like to come back, and always just so rewarding, the fans who come out and still remember you.
Isn't that great?
It is great.
Yes, fantastic.
And now it's even better because a lot of my fans are retired, so they can really go out whenever they want.
Right.
They don't have to get up to go to work in the morning.
So I mentioned the documentary.
Oh.
Now, I know you said it was at some film festivals. Where can you view it? Is it available on any of the services or as a DVD, or has it only been released in Europe? What's the story on that?
It was shown in Europe, especially in Spain, because it was a Spanish production, even though it is in English. And it is available on DVD in Europe, but that is the PAL system, those DVDs. So I'm not sure, sometimes it doesn't play on American players. But you can see it on Amazon. You can download it from Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, as you said earlier, I mean, you've got people talking about you, Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen, who were, I guess, contemporaries of yours?
Same age, class of 49.
Yeah. So are you happy with the way it came out and the documentary? And
It was a very interesting voyage because the director, Jorge Arellanes, I knew him because I had done some music for a film he was involved with, and then he told me his next project was going to be a documentary on me, and I thought he was crazy. And he kind of started following Olivier and me around with a camera, and then it grew, and he got some production and some finances, and there was a full crew, and I learned so much about myself watching that documentary. I mean, I'm not unique in that most of us, when we're going through life, it's just chaos and anarchy, and we just make the best decision based upon the information we have. But then when you look back at it, as I was able to, it looked like it was all a carefully laid out plan to get me from point A to point B, and it all made sense. And for me to be in Paris and where I was, it was like it tied the knot on my career.
so we're in Philadelphia right now shooting this interview, and I know you're playing tomorrow night, and then I think you're doing some dates. Are you in Washington? And
I'm
where's it
going
playing?
tomorrow night at the World Cafe live, and then we go up to Piermont, New York, out to Long Island again, to Port Jefferson and the Stephen Talkhouse, Narragansett, and then we go to Rockwood in New York City on the 17th, and then we end the tour at the Kennedy Center in Washington D.C., playing the Millennium Stage there, which is a real thrill.
And then what's the immediate future going to be? What's your plans? You go back to France?
I go back to France. When it rains, it pours. And, not only was there this wonderful Long Island Music Hall of Fame, playing in Madison Square Garden with Billy Joel, and I'm working on a film that is called Broken Poet. It's based on a short story I wrote in the 80s. It's about a rock star that everyone thought jumped off a bridge in Paris, was gone, and then years later one of his roadies is riding in the metro and sees someone playing in the metro that sounds like him, so Rolling Stone sends over a reporter to investigate. And I am actually playing the part of that rock star in the film. It's again a Spanish production, a different director, and we were filming in Paris last month, and we have some great actors in it. Marissa Berenson, if you remember that name, from Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon and Cabaret. A wonderful American actor named Michael O'Keefe, he was nominated for an Academy Award, I think, for The Great Santini many years ago. He's recently been in Homeland and a lot of things. And a cameo appearance by Bruce Springsteen and Patti Scialfa. So that's what's happening now. I've been totally engrossed in that film. It's my first real acting job. I did a little bit for Fellini in the 70s, and I was in a couple of French films, very small parts, but learning all those lines was a challenge. It's not like verse, chorus,
Right.
bridge, verse, chorus.
So let me just, you played Madison Square Garden with Billy Joel, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And isn't it, when Bruce Springsteen played in Paris, did you join him on stage, or where was that?
I've joined Bruce many times in Paris. The last time was with my son, Gaspard, who's a musician. And we joined him on stage at the Stade de France, which is like 80,000 people, and sang Born to Run with him. But I played with him in Paris many times, also in Madrid, Italy, Bologna, Sweden, yeah, many times he's invited me up on stage, and it is just, it's like jumping on a train that's going 100 miles an hour, and you jump on and then you jump off, it's such a thrill.
Okay, so you have a new album that's come out. What is this, your 30th or something like that?
350. This is 35, 36, something like that, yeah.
And it's called?
It's called Elliott Murphy Is Alive.
Right.
This is a live album.
Okay.
And this was recorded at a concert in Belgium. It was kind of a legendary show, a duo show with Olivier Durand. And the fans have always asked to release it because it was just a great night, and we finally did.
What are the tracks on it? From your history, how many are?
Well, gosh, there's 12 tracks. And a lot of, at that time, we had an album out called Notes from the Underground. So with a lot of tracks from that album, Razzmatazz, I think Diamonds by the Yard, which was from my third album, is on that. And we end the show with a version of L.A. Women by The Doors.
Amazing.
And I talk a little bit about Jim Morrison, and Jim Morrison came to Paris and lasted 3 months, and I'm still there.
And he has the most visited gravesite at the
He
show.
does, in Père Lachaise, yes. I've seen it.
Okay, so immediate plans then, you're going to go back, this new album will be coming out, although it was recorded previously in Belgium, and when do you start work on the next album, or what are your plans for touring in the new year?
We are always touring, Olivier Durand and me. We used to do over 100 shows a year.
Right.
But now I'm officially retired, so I do about 60
Oh.
shows a year. So we go back, and I think we have a show in France in December, and then in January we'll do a 2-week tour of Spain, which we've done every year
Right.
for 25 years. And then we are doing my 70th birthday tour, February, March, April, because I will turn 70.
Right.
March 16th, and we already got about 12 or 15 shows hooked up for that.
Now, your brother was in your band originally. What's he up to these days?
My brother Matthew Murphy, he has turned into the world-class tour manager. He played bass with me on my first album. Then he went on to work with bands like the Talking Heads, a lot of the CBGB's bands, Blondie, Robert Gordon, and now he has a wonderful life and job. He is Steve Martin's tour manager, and he's worked for Steve Martin for the last 10 years, and he just loves it because Steve is just an incredible talent and great conditions, and it's really fun. Steve Martin and Martin Short put this show together.
Okay. Well, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because obviously you were there. What happened to Joe Perry?
I don't know. It was...
Was he on the earlier part of the show?
No, he was on... many interesting things happened that night because I did Walk on the Wild Side and he did Walk This Way. So it was like the walk. I thought next we were going to do, you know, Don't Walk Away Renee or something like the left back. I was on this, I first played, I was about ninth in the set, and Joe Perry was 5 or 6 songs later. And I saw him earlier because I knew I used to open for Aerosmith back in the day, and we were both managed by the same people. And as he was coming off the stage, I said, "Nice job, Joe." And he did not look good. He looked very pale and was kind of in a hurry to get back to the dressing room. And I was sharing a dressing room with him that was separated by a curtain. And then, so I was on my side, and then I heard some very frantic activity on the other side, you know, medics, calling in the medics, and them saying, we're losing him, you know, and it was pretty scary. Pretty scary. I hear he's stabilized and he's okay. So I have no idea what happened, but I think he passed out and had trouble breathing. And
Exhaustion?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. I think he just flew in for that performance, yeah. But he was incredible when he was on stage doing Walk This Way. You wouldn't know anything was wrong. Played great.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time with us.
Okay.
And we're now going to take a break.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Denny Somach, and welcome to my record collection. Our guest today, Elliott Murphy, and Elliott is going to go through the albums that are in my collection. I know you have over 30 albums out. I don't have all 30 of them, but I think I have all your major label albums. So I'd just like you to talk a little bit about each one.
Well, this was my first album, Aqua Show. The cover, there's my brother,
Right.
Matthew on the cover, and that was shot in the Palm Court of the Plaza Hotel. Because I was very into F. Scott Fitzgerald at the time, and there's a scene in The Great Gatsby that takes place there. And then this shot on the back was from my father's show, the Aqua Show, and a line of, they were called the Aquadorables, and they were swimmers, and that's why we got a red and white umbrella there and a red and white. And the musicians who played on this were just incredible. Gene Parsons from the Byrds, Frank Owens, who had played with Dylan, and amazing.
And the songs on there?
Well, Last of the Rock Stars, you know, that was, it's funny, my first song on my first album began with the word last. Huh? How's the family? I mean, you know, I didn't know it at the time that I was writing about suburban angst, but the critics sure did, and there was a big article in Newsweek about me and Billy Joel called Split Level Rock.
Okay.
Luckily, a term that did not catch on.
Okay, now, which came first? You got 2 RCA albums.
This came first, Lost Generation. This was my second album. I tried to really get away from that suburban thing when I went out to LA. I recorded this with Paul Rothchild, who produced The Doors.
Of course.
And Janis Joplin. And we had some great musicians on this too, including Jim Gordon.
Right.
Who,
Derek and the Dominoes.
Jerry, he co-wrote Layla. We also, Paul Rothchild had brought up to LA a bunch of musicians from Louisiana, trying to get a deal for them. And Bobby Kimball was singing harmony, who went on to be in Toto,
of course,
and sing Africa.
Right.
And Richard T. And this was. I look a little too angelic on this cover. It's not what we meant to do. There was a parachute behind me.
Right.
But anyway, and my eyes aren't brown, although they are here. So.
Okay.
Then the third album, I went back to my roots, back to New York. This album cover was shot in Times Square back when it was rough and ready and dirty, and God, you can see some of the marquees they used to have. Now it's all Disneyland, and every inch a lady is on the marquee here. I mean, these were, and the back cover was shot across the street from Electric Lady Studios, where we recorded.
Okay.
And this was recorded, produced by Steve Katz,
Right.
who was in the Blues Project and Blood, Sweat and Tears. And I was thrilled to have Doug Yule from the Velvet Underground
Right.
play on this album too, as well.
Okay. Then, is that next?
Then he got on a plane and went to London, which is what I did. I signed to Columbia, and they seemed to think that the good sounds were coming out of British studios at that time. So
Right.
we went to London.
What studio did you record with?
We recorded mostly at Air Studio.
George Martin's
George Martin's
studio.
studio. George Martin came close to producing the album.
Mm-hmm.
He was busy doing, was it America or something like that? But
Right.
he offered us his studio, and I went in there with a producer named Robin Jeffrey Cable, who had been a famous engineer, worked on a lot of Elton John albums, Carly Simon's "You're So Vain," that great single, and also a lot of great musicians on this, including Phil Collins, who played drums. And at the time Phil did this, Peter Gabriel had just left Genesis, and I asked him, "What are you going to do now?" And he said, "You know, we've auditioned so many singers, I'm thinking of singing myself."
Did he ask you to audition?
He did not ask me to audition. And I had the thrill of Mick Taylor.
Right.
This was the first thing he did after leaving the Rolling Stones. He played on Just a Story from America.
What's your favorite song on that?
I think my favorite song is Anastasia.
Okay.
And that's a ballad. I wrote that in London. They left breakfast, breakfast tray outside my door, and the newspaper of the day, and those British tabloids tend to be sensational, and there was a headline, "New Anastasia Found. The Tsar's Daughter Lives," you know. And I wrote that song that day, and we recorded it a few days later, and we had the St. Paul's Boys Choir singing out. And for me, of every song I've recorded, it's the one that is the perfect track. There was nothing I would change about it.
Was this next?
This could have been next, yeah, Fairs. This is with the beautiful.
See, I got it for $5.98.
Yeah.
I actually went out and bought it. I guess they didn't have a promo department.
Yeah, this was, we called it, we started a record company with my brother called Courtesan, and we called it an albumette. I mean, it was really like an EP.
Right, right.
Before they were doing EP, and this was Kathy Smith.
Where was that shot?
This was shot in my bedroom on Gramercy Park in New York.
Okay.
And, well, this was with Tony Machine, who had been with New York Dolls, Ernie Brooks from the Modern Lovers. And the interesting thing about this album is, it was my first independent production.
Right.
And I did it because I just had to get my music out. I didn't know how else to do it. And now, in a lot of interviews overseas, they call me like a pioneer of independent artists, but at the time it was just a question of survival.
Okay, so, of course, since you're here,
Yeah.
I ask you to sign them.
I will.
So they can go back in the collection.
Well, okay.
So I cut the plastic, so you
All right.
got space there.
I'll start with this. Interesting thing about Affairs, when I was me and my brother and someone else running that company, but my brother was also working as a tour manager, so sometimes I'd be kind of answering the phones, and it was a record store that had sold out and needed 25 more copies right away, so I said, okay, we'll get them right down to you, and I showed up with the records, and they say, but aren't you Elliott Murphy? And I said, yeah. They said, you mean you deliver the records yourself? I said, yeah. And they said, why? I said, well, you know, after 4 labels with the majors, now I want total artistic control.
That must have been great. I mean, just think the DIY movement was started by...
Yeah. DENNY, right?
Yes, but you can just sign it because it's going in the archives.
All right.
And that's great. So that's Aqua Show.
That's Aqua Show we got.
Okay.
This. Man, where was it?
It's good.
Right across
Yeah,
there?
sure. I mean, you can do it on the white
Okay.
or over your brown eyes.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
I feel like Donald Trump signing his...
Yeah, right.
This one, I think we got plastic on it here. When I
Okay.
put it back, I can
Yep.
cut that. Yeah. Wow. This brings back memories.
Doesn't it?
Classic rock. We didn't think it was classic.
Nobody thought it was going to be around long enough to be classic.
I always say it's great when you're new, because then you're the new kid.
Right.
Everyone wants to know about you. And it's great when you survive and you enter what I call the museum era. and you're a legend. But it's those middle years that
Right.
are tough. Okay, there's that. And here we go, right on Times Square.
Actually, for some reason, I have 2 copies of those, both promos. Look at that. Well, what's great about these is they're promo albums.
Yeah.
So they're first pressings.
Yeah,
So
they
they're
are.
the best. They sound the best. The
They do
hottest.
sound the best, yeah. And now vinyl is back.
Yeah.
God bless. I didn't know if I was standing on a crosswalk, but isn't that kind of the Omega sign there?
Yeah, it is. You're right. Okay, Elliott, thank you very much.
Thank you, Denny.
Sharing my record collection and giving me the stories. And we'll look forward to your new album. And also next time you come back to the States.
So we went through 4, so next time we'll have 5, we'll have to go through
I'll-
the next 30.
I'll make it my job to try and get the rest of them so we can go through them.
That's a deal.
That's what's in my record collection. Elliott Murphy's our special guest. Thank you for joining us.